If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. Page 133. I remember the night the baby was conceived because it was the night of the day we finally found our loft. And this cat, whose name was Levy, really was going to rent it to us. He wasn't full of crap. He was an olive-skinned, curly-haired, merry-faced boy from the Bronx, about 33 maybe, with big, kind of electrical black eyes. And he dug us. He dug people who loved each other. The loft was off Canal Street, and it was big and in pretty good condition. It had 2 big windows on the street, and the 2 back windows opened into a roof with a railing. There was a room for Fonny to work, and with all the windows open, you wouldn't die of heat prostration in the summertime. We were very excited about the roof because you could have dinner on it, or serve drinks, or just sit there in the evenings if you wanted to, and with your arms around each other. Heck, Levy said, drag out the blankets and sleep on it. He smiled at Fonny. Make babies on it. That's how I got here. What I most remember about him is that he didn't make either of us feel self-conscious. We all laughed together. You two should have some beautiful babies, he said, and take it from me, kids. The world damn sure needs them. He asked us for only 1 month in advance, and about a week later, I took the money over to him. And then, when Fonny got into trouble, he did something very strange, and I think very beautiful. He called me and he said that I could have the money back anytime I wanted it. But he said he wouldn't rent that loft to anybody but us. I can't, he said. Those jerks, that loft stays empty until your man gets out of jail. And I ain't just whistling Dixie, honey. And he gave me his number and asked me please to let him know if there was anything at all he could do. I want you kids to have your babies. I'm funny that way. Levy explained and exhibited the somewhat complicated structure of locks and keys. Our loft was the top of 3 or 4 stories. The stairs were steep. There was a set of keys for our loft, which had double locks. Then there was the door at the top of the steps, which locked us away from the rest of the building. Man, Fonny asked, what do we do in case of a fire? Oh, said Levy, I forgot. And he unlocked the doors again, and we went back into the loft. He took us onto the roof and led us to the edge, where the railing was. On the far right of the roof, the railing opened, extending itself into a narrow catwalk. This railing led to the metal steps, by which steps one descended into the courtyard. Once in this courtyard, which seemed to be closed in by walls, one might wonder what on earth to do. It was something of a trap. Still, one would not have had to leap from the burning building. Once on the ground, one had to hope merely not to be burned beneath the flaming, crashing walls. Well, said Fonny, carefully holding me by one elbow and leaning me back onto the roof, I can dig that. We again went through the ritual of locking all of the doors and descended into the street. Don't worry about the neighbors, Levy said, because after 5 or 6 o'clock, you won't have any. All you got between you and the street are small, failing sweatshops. And we got into the streets, and he showed us how to lock and unlock the street door. Got it? He asked Fonny. Got it, Fonny said. Come on, I'll buy you a milkshake. And we had 3 milkshakes on the corner, and Levy shook hands and left us, saying that he had to get home to his wife and kids, 2 boys, one age 2, one age 3.5. But before he left us, he said, look, I told you not to worry about the neighbors, but watch out for the cops. They're murder. One of the most terrible, most mysterious things about a life is that a warning can be heeded only in retrospect, too late. Lovey left us, and Fonny and I walked hand in hand up the broad, bright, crowded streets toward the village, toward our pad. We talked and talked and laughed and laughed. We crossed Houston and started up 6th Avenue, Avenue of the Americas, with all those freaking flags on it, which we didn't see. I wanted to stop at one of the markets on Bleecker Street to buy some tomatoes. We crossed the Avenue of the Americas and started west on Bleecker. Fonny had one hand around my waist. We stopped at a vegetable stand, and I started looking. Fonny hates shopping. He said, "Wait 1 minute, I'm going to buy some cigarettes." And he went up the street, just around the corner. I started picking out the tomatoes, and I remember that I was kind of humming to myself. I started looking around for a scale and for the man or the woman who would weigh the tomatoes for me and tell me what I owed. Fonny is right about me when he says I'm not very bright. When I first felt his hand on my behind, I thought it was Fonny. Then I realized that Fonny would never touch me that way in public. I turned my 6 tomatoes in both hands and found myself facing a small, young, greasy Italian punk. "I can sure dig a tomato who digs tomatoes," he said. And he licked his lips and smiled. 2 things happened in me, all at the same time. 3. This was a very crowded street. I knew that Fonny would be back at any moment. I wanted to smash my tomatoes in this boy's face. But no one had really noticed us yet, and I didn't want Fonny to get into a fight. I saw a white cop coming slowly up the street. I realized that I was black and that the crowded streets were white, and so I turned away and walked into the shop. Still with my tomatoes in my hands, I found a scale and I put the tomatoes on the scale, and I looked around for someone to weigh them so that I could pay and get out of the store before Fonny came back from around the corner. The cop was now on the other side of the street, and the boy had followed me into the store. "Hey, sweet tomato, you know I dig tomatoes." And now people were watching us. I did not know what to do. The only thing to do was to get out of there before Fonny turned the corner. I tried to move, but the boy blocked my way. I looked around for someone to help me. People were staring, but no one moved. I decided in despair to call the cop. But when I moved, the boy grabbed my arm. He was really probably just a broken down junkie, but when he grabbed my arm, I slapped his face and I spat in it. And exactly at that moment, Fonny entered the store. Fonny grabbed the boy by the hair, knocked him to the ground, picked him up and kicked him in the balls, and dragged him to the sidewalk and knocked him down again. I screamed and held on to Fonny with all my might, for I saw that the cop, who had been on the far corner, was now crossing the street on the run, and the white boy lay bleeding and retching in the gutter. I was sure that the cop intended to kill Fonny, but he would not kill Fonny if I could keep my body between Fonny and this cop. And with all my strength, with all my love, my prayers, and armed with the knowledge that Fonny was not, after all, going to knock me to the ground, I held the back of my head against Fonny's chest, held both his wrists between my 2 hands, and I looked up into the face of this cop. I said, "That man there attacked me, right in the store, right now. Everybody saw it." No one said a word. The cop looked at them all. Then he looked back at me. Then he looked at Fonny. I could not see Fonny's face, but I could see the cop's face, and I knew that I must not move, nor, if I could possibly help it, allow Fonny to move. "And where were you?" the cop elaborately asked Fonny, while all this, his eyes flicked over me in exactly the same way the boy's eyes had. While all this was going on between Junior there and, his eyes took me in again, and your girl. He was around the corner, I said, buying cigarettes. For I did not want Fonny to speak. I hoped that he would forgive me later. Is that so, boy? I said, he's not a boy, officer. Now he really looked at me for the first time, and therefore, for the first time, he really looked at Fonny. Meanwhile, some people had got Junior to his feet. You live around here? The cop asked Fonny. The back of my head was still on Fonny's chest, but he had released his wrists from my hands. Yes, Fonny said, on Bank Street, and he gave the officer the address. I knew that, in that moment, Fonny would push me away. We're going to take you down, boy, the cop said, for assault and battery. I do not know what would now have happened if the Italian lady who ran the store had spoken up. If she had not spoken up. Oh, no, she said. I know both these young people. They shop here very often. What the young lady has told you is the truth. I saw them both just now when they came, and I watched her choose her tomatoes, and her young man left her, and he said he would be right back. I was busy. I could not get to her right away. Her tomatoes are still on the scale, and that little good-for-nothing crap over there, he did attack her, and he has got exactly what he deserved. And what would you do if a man attacked your wife? If you have one? The crowd snickered and the cop flushed. I saw exactly what happened. I am a witness, and I will swear to it. She and the cop stared at each other. Funny way to run a business, he said, and licked his lower lip. You will not tell me how to run my business, she said. I was on this street before you got here, and I will be here when you are gone. Take, she said, gesturing toward the boy, now sitting on the curbstone with some of his friends around him. That miserable urchin away with you, to Bellevue, or to Rikers Island, or drop him in the river. He is of no earthly use to anyone, but do not try to frighten me, Busta. I noticed for the first time that Bell's eyes are blue, and that what I can see of his hair is red. He looks again at me and then again at Fonny. He licks his lips again. The Italian lady re-enters the store and takes my tomatoes off the scale and puts them in a bag. Well, says Belle, staring at Fonny, be seeing you around. You may, says Fonny, and then again you may not. Not, says the Italian lady, coming back into the street. If they or I see you first. She turns me around and puts the bag of tomatoes in my hands. She is standing between myself and Belle. She stares into my eyes. You have a good man, she says. Take him home, away from these diseased pigs. I look at her. She touches my face. I have been in America a long time, she says. I hope I do not die here. She goes back into her store. Fonny takes the tomatoes from me and holds the bag in the crook of one arm. The other arm he entwines through mine, interlocking his fingers through mine. We walk slowly away toward our pad. Tish, says Fonny, very quietly, with a dreadful quietness. I almost know what he's going to say. Yes? Don't ever try to protect me again. Don't do that. I know I am saying the wrong thing, but you were trying to protect me. It's not, he says, with the same terrifying quietness. The same thing, Tish. And he suddenly takes the bag of tomatoes and smashes them against the nearest wall. Thank God the wall is blank. Thank God it is now beginning to be dark. Thank God tomatoes splatter, but do not ring. I know what he is saying. I know he is right. I know I must not say anything. Thank God he does not let go of my hand. I look down at the sidewalk, which I cannot see. I hope he cannot hear my tears. But he does. He stops and turns me to him, and he kisses me. He pulls away and looks at me and kisses me again. Don't think I don't know you love me. You believe we going to make it? Then I am calm. There are tears on his face. His or mine, I don't know. I kiss him where our tears fall. I start to say something. He puts one finger on my lips. He smiles his little smile. Hush. Don't say a word. I'm going to take you out to dinner at our Spanish place. You remember? Only this time, it's got to be on credit. And he smiles and I smile and we keep on walking. We have no money, Fanny says to Pedrocito when we enter the restaurant, but we are hungry. But we are very hungry, and I will have some money in a couple of days. In a couple of days, says Pedrico, furiously. That is what they all say. And furthermore, striking an incredulous hand on his forehead, I suppose that you would like to eat sitting down.